Yo, what up, guys? Welcome back to 3 Rounds. Now, I know we've been off for a few weeks, but I got insanely busy. From the fight night to an appearance in South Dakota to UFC 281, which was an absolute monster. Guys, I love doing this show, and I'm excited to be back doing the show with you guys every week. So, let's get to the fight. Boom. Oh, yeah. Those nerves are going because it's time for round 1. Now, guys, at UFC 281, Israel Adesanya lost his middleweight championship to Alex Pereira. But he still, like a pro, is doing all the media that he was scheduled to do before. But when you lose a fight, especially a championship fight, people have questions. They want to know things. One of the big questions they've had for Izzy is, what did he think of the stoppage? Because as you know, you watched the fight, Izzy was still up on his feet whenever he got knocked out or stopped. So they ask him, how'd you feel? He's on Ariel Helwani, and he starts to explain the finishing sequence. First, before the quote, though, he talks about having a bit of drop foot, which means like your foot kind of goes to sleep. If you ever laid on a couch or sat with your feet under your other leg, it goes to sleep, and it feels like you can't walk. Izzy said he had something like that, so he thought to himself against the side of the octagon saying, quote, I was like, okay, stand there, just don't move anymore, let him gas himself out. So he said he was waiting for Pereira to throw the big shots, put his head down. He could see Pereira's arms, his legs, and that's all he felt he needed to see. He knew where the big shots were coming, but then the referee saw him get hit with 2 of them, wobbled. He's standing there like, wait a minute, he's going to slow down. I just got to stay safe. And then I'm going to take him down again. I'm going to do my work, and I'm going to beat him up. Unfortunately, referee jumps in and stops the fight. Izzy said more than anything, he was just disappointed. He was disappointed in the way that the fight ended. Not necessarily blaming Mark Goddard, but saying, it's unfortunate that he didn't give me a chance. Now, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. When I sat next to the octagon right after the fight, I thought, no question, fight should have been stopped, if not stopped earlier. But then when I started watching it again, I always catch myself going, whoa. And I was like, well, maybe he could have kept fighting. But the reality is, I still think that it was a good stoppage. But there's a little bit more reservations in that thought than I had initially. Now, when you have a champion losing his belt in that way where he doesn't get put out cold, people all have opinions. And a lot of them say stuff like, let me go out on my shield. I'd rather be put out cold. But why? Like, why? Why do you have to be put out cold in order for a fight to be finished? And to me, I know fighters ask that question, but this doesn't fit Israel Adesanya's thought and his demeanor. Matt Brown was one of the guys that spoke up on that thought. But I would expect that from Matt Brown because he's an old school guy. He's an old school guy that wants to be put to sleep, and Matt has been put to sleep before. But Izzy's new style. Izzy's a guy that's more flash, less damage. So that thought, to me, is a bit weird because you don't see that from him. Now, I get it. Against Kelvin Gastelum, I'll die for this. I'm willing to die in here. He's a tough guy. You got to be a tough guy to fight in the octagon and become a champion. But make no mistake about it, guys. It was only going to get worse for Adesanya if he kept fighting in the way that he does, because that dude, Pereira, was smashing him. And every time he hit him, you could see the damage that he inflicted on Adesanya. And I don't know if it's like some sort of like mental holdup that Izzy has with this guy because this guy's beaten him a couple times, but he didn't respond well to the shots when Pereira was hitting him. He didn't respond well. It was almost like he froze every single time he got hit by this guy. I think that speaks to who Alex is. Alex is a massive dude, and Robert Whittaker even spoke so much. But for Adesanya to go out there and say, I'm not exactly sure why the fight was stopped when it was because I was okay, it tells me that he was a little bit more gone than he probably thought he was in that moment. Thought it was a good stoppage. When I watched back, I was like, maybe. But no, I still think the same thing. Good stoppage. Guys, stop fighting with these officials on stopping fights just because you're still standing up. It makes no sense. Don't get your brain shut off when it doesn't need to. You live to fight another day. And that's what Adesanya gets to do. And he will probably go right back into a championship opportunity against Alex Pereira. We're getting close to the 10 seconds, last 10 of the round. But Izzy fights on. But that dude's going to have to make some changes to break that curse because Poatan has one on him. And he's undefeated against him at 3-0 and the new middleweight champion of the world.
I'm going to show you how
Round 2, the fight's on. I was in the octagon when these two came face-to-face. And on Saturday, we announced that at UFC 284, the main event will be Alexander Volkanovski, the pound-for-pound king, versus the number 2 ranked pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Islam Makhachev. Guys, I was in the octagon in Abu Dhabi, and you could feel the tension. Because I'm interviewing Islam, and he calls for Volkanovski. He says, where's the small guy? So I'm like, yo, bring Alex in here. Because there's nothing better than a face-off.
Habib just said you want to fight Volkanovski. Volkanovski standing right here. Are you down?
Let's do it. Hey, the lightweight on the line, pound for pound number 1 on the line. Let's do it.
I remember back in the day, the UFC had more of those where the next guy would get an opportunity to come face-to-face with the champion on the champion's night. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it's changed. But it doesn't seem to happen as much as it used to. But then when you stop to think about this fight and what this fight is and what this fight means, there are a number of reasons why it's so good. First off, when do we see records like this going into a championship fight? When? Even the best guys, 2 losses, 3 losses, 4, 5. Some of them, I mean, we've had champions that have 5, 6 losses. But when do we see guys like Volkanovski, who's 25-1 on a 22-fight win streak and the featherweight champion of the world, or Islam, who's 23-1 on an 11-fight win streak and the lightweight champion of the world? When do we see that? We don't see these types of matchups between fighters who are competing at that level. We were asked a while ago, what is the best fight the UFC can make right now? And many said Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. We didn't think about Alexander Volkanovski as that guy. That's the fight. Some will say Khamzat versus Usman or Khamzat versus Leon or Jones versus Francis. Nah, it's this matchup. Makhachev versus Volkanovski is the biggest fight the UFC can make right now. Why? Because these dudes are so damn good. Look at what Makhachev did to Charles Oliveira, who's running roughshod over the lightweight division. And if Alexander Volkanovski has not earned your respect now, you can't be pleased. Because when he fought the Korean Zombie and made him look like he did, everybody goes, that's why he took the Zombie, because he knows how difficult the Holloway fight is. He's going to always outclass the Zombie. What does that dude do? He comes back and he does the same thing to Max Holloway. So if you're still doubting Alexander Volkanovski, that's crazy. Spoke to Javier Mendez a couple weeks ago, and he said, we have to show this guy respect. If we don't, he has the ability to win the fight. I agree. He won't be small. He's starting to take in 4,000 calories a day now as he's moving up to lightweight. He'll be big enough. He'll be strong enough. He'll be prepared to win this championship fight. And there's no way that Alexander Volkanovski believes that he's going to win this fight. He would become only the 5th double champ in UFC history. I'm one of those guys. You know what I'm saying? I'm one of those guys. And there's been different levels of success for people trying to win 2 championships. Some have won, some have lost. The great the great BJ Penn lost. George St. Pierre might have lost. People have lost trying to get another championship. Who does this fight mean more for? Alexander Volkanovski? Absolutely. Because he's the small guy. He's supposed to lose this fight to Islam. Islam wins, he's supposed to. It's not a big deal. That's why there's always danger when you're the big guy in a championship combining situation. Because the reality is the little guy has nothing to lose. Volk is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And that's a great honor. And that'll be tested between these two because pound for pound means one thing, that you possess a style that translates across multiple weight classes. In boxing, that's proven constantly because the guys who do it and are pound for pound, they're generally smaller because they move up in weight and they become champions in the next weight class above. We don't see it as much in MMA. But when people do find the way to become double champion, they do skyrocket up the rankings. So does Volkanovski have a style that really does prove pound for pound? I guess we'll find out in Perth. And they get a good one. Because I know both guys will be well prepared. And Alexander Volkanovski not only carries the pound for pound title, but he also carries the ability to keep city kickboxing with a champion.
I'm gonna show you how
It's time for round 3. Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier put on an absolute barn burner last weekend. Michael Chandler snotted blood on Dustin Poirier in the middle of the fight. Dustin Poirier called him a dirty motherfucker. He called him dirty because he said Chandler also grabbed him by the face and stuck his fingers in his mouth to try to pull his neck up to get the rear naked choke. But this is where it gets interesting. Dustin, while doing media, is comfortable now. Dustin's on the MMA Hour with my boy Ariel Helwani. And they're talking about it. And when it was brought up, Dustin admits, I bit the shit out of his fingers. He says, but I had my mouth guard on so only my bottom teeth could get him. He didn't even try to pull his hand out when I bit him. In the moment, when I was biting down on his fingers, I kind of stopped biting like, oh shit, what am I doing? Reality hit me, and I'm glad I just bit him, but it was an instinct. He said, it's whatever though. And I'm sure he didn't plan on doing it, but in the heat of the moment, you're fighting for your life. And just like when I bit him, I didn't plan on biting him. I was like, oh shit, I'm fucking really biting this guy. It's a war. I'm fighting. Things happen in there, but I admit it. Dude comes clean. You know what the crazy thing about this in this quote is to me? And the most important and telling thing about this quote is it's sport. It absolutely is sport. But I'm telling you from experience, you're in there and it's life or death. Really. It's life or death. Because when you're in there and you're fighting some dude, especially if you get taken down or he's on top of you and you're tired and you're sweaty, the instinct within you, the animal, starts to try to push its way out. And what do animals do in those situations? It's fight or flight. You can't run inside the octagon. So when Dustin Poirier is down there, he is in a disadvantaged position. He has gotten taken down. He's getting controlled by a man on top of him, snotting blood all over him, and grabbing him by the face, trying to choke him out, recognizing that if he gets choked out, that's death. That's your death. Because you lose. And in fighting, to these guys, losing is almost death. Because that's what we're fighting to win and to provide. Especially with the guys that have a win and a show bonus. Because in that show bonus, when it's gone, you have now lost the ability to provide half of what you provide for your family. So in that's death. But that's the difference between being normal and being a real fighter. Because normal people want to fade. They always want to fade away. Or they want to run. And they want to do something different. They don't react in that way when shit starts to go sideways on them. Fighters don't. Fighters don't fade away. Fighters embrace that uncertainty, and they do the only thing that they have been taught to do for so long that your mind changes, and that's fight. And that's exactly what Dustin Poirier was doing. Because if they were in the jungle somewhere fighting for a piece of meat for food, and Michael Chandler did that, he would bite him. Because it's life or death. Just like it's life or death out in there, out in that jungle, out in that real world, in your job and everything else that you do. It's the same thing inside that octagon, but just way more primal. Way more primal. You're going on adrenaline. You're going on like this insane energy. You're going on so many things that allow for you to try to get through those moments. Now, does something happen or come from this? I'd imagine so. I'd imagine Dustin Poirier is going to have to answer for that. Michael Chandler stuck his fingers in his mouth, though, so what do you think's going to happen? This guy's a fighter. So, I guess what I'm trying to tell you is these guys think differently. The mentality is much different than you and your neighbor or the person that you see cutting the grass on Sunday. While they do those things, they are much different than the normal people walking around this world. So respect what they do inside that octagon because they are fighting for their life in there. Dustin Poirier gave you a little glimpse into that. Guys, now for my final thought. Frankie Edgar is retiring. The answer, the little engine that could. The guy that if you wanted to see a real-life Rocky Balboa, you tuned into a Frankie Edgar fight. From his classic fights with Gray Maynard, to the wins over Chad Mendez, to the 2 times he fought Jose Aldo, even though he lost, he once again showed why people respect him so much. As with most great fighters, it does not end pretty. And it definitely did not end pretty for Frankie Edgar. But when you are a blood and guts warrior like this man, what more can you expect than to see him go out on his shield? Frankie Edgar got knocked out on Saturday. But the one thing you could never knock out is all the memories that we had of this man competing inside the octagon. Frankie, thank you, man. You told me in the fighter meeting last week, now the energy and the time shifts to your children and their life in sport. Trust me, my friend, there's nothing sweeter. Enjoy it. Thank you for all the time. No one has spent more time in the octagon than Frankie Edgar. We all are better for getting to watch you compete, my friend. So once again, enjoy retirement, Frankie. We're going to miss you in there, but I'm pretty sure we'll see you around. I'm certain you'll be a really, really good coach because you're as skilled as any man we've seen compete inside the UFC. Until next time, guys, like, subscribe. Peace.